Okay, in this demo, we'll try to restrict access to by info areas. Like in BW session, when we looked at the BW demo, one of the first demos we saw how we can restrict access by info areas. So which means that once the info area is given, the user should be able to see everything under that info area, meaning all the info providers, that is the info cube, the ODS objects, and the queries underneath them, the user should be able to access all of those. Now, let's see how this role was built in BW. So one of the first tests that we'll do is we're going to take the info area 0FI-AR and give everything access to everything underneath that. 0FI-AR is an info area that is present under the info area 0FI, which also has other info areas within it. But when we build a role with this info area, the user should not be able to see the other two info areas or any other info area underneath this. So that is the first test we'll do. Later what we'll do is we'll modify and specify another info area and see if the user is able to see all of both of the info areas and everything underneath them. And a third scenario that we're going to test for info areas would be to use the while character star and see when we specify 0FI star whether we are able to see all of these. So let's see how this role was built in BW, and then we will see how to do that in BI. So the role that we used in that was this. So let's go to see how this role was specified, and then we'll open up another session and build the role to get the same output. Now, to work with BW or BI analysis, BI system security, you need certain objects that are absolutely needed. S_RFC is one of them. So from a security strategy standpoint, you could put this object in a separate role and that would be assigned to everybody. So you can put that. And now let's go and see if the objects that were given to. So our new role will also have this. So let's go start building the roles. Let's say PFCG, and let's say BI info area. Okay, so let's create this role. Now, from an end user standpoint, the only transaction they would need would be the transaction RRMX to bring up the BEX analyzer. Otherwise, the end users don't need any other transaction code. So let's go and build this role that we had for BI. So the object that is absolutely needed by everyone is the S_RFC, because it has to be MS Excel has to communicate with the BI system, and that is done by RFCs, remote function calls. So let's give star. Keep in mind that in certain places, the customers are very particular about protecting the RFCs. So you'll have to specifically give the values here, depending on what they are. Okay, to execute the queries, we need rscomp and rscomp1. So let's enter those two and specify the same values that we had specified in now. To execute the queries, the activity values would be 03 is for displaying the query and 16 is for executing. In the info area button, we are trying to restrict access by 0FI-AR info area, and that's what it is by this info area. and we are giving access to everything, all the info providers within this info area, all the queries within that info area, and the reporting type is REP because we want to execute the queries. Let's go and maintain the values for s underscore rs comp1. Now this object goes along with rs comp. So whatever fields are common between the two objects, whatever values you specified in comp, you specified the same values in comp1 for the common fields. So activity field is common. So let's specify the 0316 here. Name ID of the reporting component is common. So we put star here, so you put star here. Type of reporting component is common. So if you put REP there, let us put REP here also. And the owner is the field that controls, if you want to control on the user ID or the user that created the query, you can specify that user's name here. But we are not doing that, so put star. Now, the difference between analysis authorization and BW security is that from a repeating user standpoint, the supporting objects s underscore rs underscore icube and s underscore rs underscore odso, in analysis authorization BI, you don't need these two objects for end user for reporting purposes. But whatever access these objects would give in BW, that has to be compensated in BI. So to do that, we use analysis authorization. So we'll create the analysis authorization for replacing or compensating for these two objects. So the transaction code for creating the analysis authorization is rsec-admin. So let's do that. And to create analysis authorization, click on maintain. And let's say create analysis authorization called info area, so that we know this info area is for info area example. Click on create and give a short description and medium description. So you can give a short description if that is good enough, or then you can give the both. Now the three characteristics that are absolutely needed, we need to insert those first. So let's click insert 3 rows. So one of the analysis authorization is for activity. The second one is 0TCA IPROV. Now, if these characteristics were not made authorization relevant, you won't be able to insert it. Now, I will show with an example. So third one is the 0TCA valid. So these are the three characteristics that need to be part of at least one authorization, analysis authorization that gets assigned to the user. Now let's try one more. The one in here characteristics that was not made authorization relevant. So we didn't make plant as authorization relevant. Let's see what happens. So at the bottom of the screen, you would get a message called characteristic 0 plant, in this case, not authorization relevant. So if a characteristic has to be part of analysis authorization, it has to be made authorization relevant. So let's just remove it. Now, let's go and maintain the values for these characteristics. So double click on the characteristic. You'll get to value authorizations tab, insert a row, Now, as values, you can specify uh, individual values, or you can specify a range of values, or you can specify a value that follows a pattern. So in our case, because we are restricting by only one info area, we will use equals. So 0 FIAR. Oh, sorry, this is activity, right? So the activity should be 03, because in InfoCube and ODS objects, for example, the activity is 03. So you basically replace that here in this example. Now I go back. So you have this icon appearing again. Now 0TC IPROV is the field for info providers. So the info provider field is equivalent to InfoCube field. So whatever value we gave in comp in the InfoCube field, you have to specify that in info provider characteristic. So let's double click on it, insert. Now because it's a star, it follows a pattern, so the value should be CP, contains. So anything that, so put star here, because that's the value we gave for InfoCube field. Now click go back. Now the third characteristics is the validity. Now here you can specify whether you want the exclusion or the inclusion of the values. So I or E. So include, say, because we are going to specify the range of validity. So you can specify greater than or equal to or between, or this value. So let's go between and specify the dates. So let's basically take the same dates and just copy it to 999. After you have maintained the values for all characteristics, save them. Now this analysis authorization can be assigned to a user in two different ways. So let's go back to assign the analysis authorization to the user. So you can go to user tab and say assign, give the user ID and click on change. Okay. And say the info area and insert it like this and save it. But we are not going to do that. We want to assign this through a role. So because the problem with this mechanism is that if you have too many users to whom this has to be assigned, you have to maintain it that many times. So which could be wasting time in a way. So let's go and remove it and assign this analysis authorization through a role. So if you want to assign it through a role, then SAP has introduced a new authorization object for the purpose. So the object is s_rs_auth. So, and this object has one field which is for analysis authorization. So you go and assign, see, okay, I forgot what that analysis authorization was. Let's go back. Oops, let's see, it's already there. Analysis authorization was Z info area. So let's go and assign Z info area here. And now generate the role because the role has been created. So you see the difference here now. We have three objects, comp and comp1, which is also there in BW setup. What we don't have in BW is BI is these two objects, but the authorizations for coming out of these two objects are now replaced by the analysis authorization. So let's go and create, execute this, assign this role to a user, user A, and log in as user A and see if you are able to see the info, everything under the info area 0FIAR. So let's log in as user A now. So we logged in with user A, right? So let's go and click on the info area button. And now we should be able to see if everything is right, only the info area 0FIAR. So let's put the technical names on. Click on here 0FIAR, and then you should see everything underneath that. So it has got some info cubes and 3 info cubes and 1 info ODS object. So when you expand, you should be able to see that you should have access to all the info areas and info cubes, all the queries under those info providers. So now let's take our next example by adding one more info area to the list in the role. So let's go to the role and let's add another info area to the list. So 0FIAR AP. Do we need to add here? No, because this object doesn't have anything. But if it was BW system, then you would have to modify is_rs_iCube, as well as if ODS object this was there, you would have to modify this. But in analysis authorization in BI, since we don't have these objects anymore, we don't worry about them. But we have the analysis authorization. So we remember that we specified the info area in the we didn't specify info area here also because we are not here, so we have to go back, maintain, change. So here also we don't specify anything because in this list also we don't specify any info area. So if you see, the maintenance has become a lot easier now because you don't have to, just because you wanted to give access to one additional info area and everything underneath them, we didn't have to, we just have to change this one object. So let's log in as user A again and see if we are able to see info providers from these two info areas now. Okay, let's click on the info area button and let's see if we are able to see both these info areas now. So let's put the technical names on and expand the nodes so you can see both of them now. Right, we added this info area, so we are able to see everything underneath that info area, and we already had 0FIAR. Now from the role, if I remove 0FIAR, then you would only see this piece. You won't be able to see all this. So let's take the next example by specifying the info area ranges. So if you follow a pattern, let's go and add this to 0FIA, FI star. and see what happens now. So now we should see more info areas now, because that all the info areas that begin with 0fi, 0fi, 0fi. So it could be these three plus some more. So let's try that out. Now, before we do that, let's do this first, and then we'll do this combination also. So because it has to exclude this. But now you should also display this info area 0fi gl. So let's try that. Let's generated the role. Now let's go and log in with the user A again. So let's click on the info area button. Now this time we should see all those info areas that begin with 0fi. What was that? 0fi. So let's put the technical names on. So you see all the info areas that begin with 0fi started, you getting displayed. So if you expand, you'll get all of those. So similarly, now if you go and modify the role and say ZFIA, you should get only all the info areas that begin with 0FIA. Now we remember that we are not changing anything in the analysis authorization, because the analysis authorization doesn't have any characteristic that is related to the info area values. So we are not changing anything as far as analysis authorization is concerned. But in BW, you would have to change all that, wherever the info area button field appears in whatever objects, you would have to change all those objects. But we don't need to do that in analysis authorization, because the characteristic info area is not been used. So let's log off. Let's log in as user A again and see if we are able to see 058. So we should not be able to see all these info areas. Okay, so we should only be able to see these three. So let's try that out by logging it user A again. Let's click on the info area button, and now this time you should be only able to see the info areas that begin with 0FIA. Let's put the technical names on. Expand. Now, as you can see, only the user has access to every info area that begins with 0FIA, because that's what we specified in the role. Now again, we are not changing any info area analysis authorization, because the analysis of the info area characteristic has not been used in analysis authorization. So in the next demo that we'll see, we'll try to restrict by info cubes. Now this is where the actual in real life scenarios, you will use the actual values, the info cube values, to restrict access to the users. So let's see that.